MountAvoca was basically, it was a family business. My father started in 1970. I grew up in Melbourne. I used to come up as a little kid, doing those little things, catching tadpoles in the dams, playing in the mud and that kind of stuff. And then as I got older, I'd work with him around the winery. Back in the old days, it was stumps and rocks. We cleared it and planted the grapes, built the winery in 1978. I went to MountAvoca University and did a degree in microbiology. I wasn't 100% sure I'd go into winemaking. I then worked in Europe for a number of years. Then I came back and started working with my father in the winemaking. And that's when I was kind of glad I did the microbiology, because that covers pretty much all the technical aspects of making wine. In 2001, my father sold it to a group called Barrington Group, and they had a number of wineries, and the idea was to sell the wine overseas. Unfortunately, there was a few problems in the way it was run. I managed to negotiate with the administrators. Eventually, after putting in bids over about a 12-month period, managed to buy it back. And that was a bit of a mixed decision. It was quite a big thing to try and get enough money to buy back the family farm. While we were always clean and green and estate-grown fruit, to become organic, that was a really big thing for us. And the driver came when I went to a tasting in Melbourne. At Fed Square, they had a tasting of organic wines from all around the world. And I do a lot of tastings, and this was quite interesting in that there was a theme. All the wines had this extra vivacity, this life. There was something really exciting about those wines. They were more alive than the wines we had. That made me think that organic wasn't just some label. There was actually a real quality reason to push for that. And so having tasted those wines, I thought we need to get that extra level, go that extra level. And so going organic for us was really in search of having the absolutely best product that we could make. We've been organic for four or 5 years in the vineyard, and 2016 was the first year we've had 100% organic wine. And I'm pretty confident now our wines, we can put them up against anything around the world. I think the fact that there's no chemical residues or any of that is actually pretty important, not just in how they taste, but in how they make you feel. The organic certification is a pretty big process, and the paperwork is enormous. But the actual hard work probably was taking place 5-10 years before that. We planted 5,000 trees, so we could harvest those to make our own wood chips, which we could then put into our own compost, which we mix with all the waste product, skins and seeds. So the great market vintage goes in with the wood chips, and that becomes compost. The important things to us are that I can walk out in the vineyard anytime and I can taste grapes, because I know there's never any chemicals there. My kids can run around and play and roll around in stuff. We know it's always safe. Even in my father's time, we're very clean and green. We ran a lot of programs that minimised chemical use. We had different programs which looked at weather, so we could minimise chemical use for fungicide in disease control. We were always very clean and green. We started composting very early on. We make our own compost. And so going organic was just a couple of small things we had to change, mainly with controlling the weeds. So we have no herbicide or weedicide at all. The reason we went organic originally was just in search of that extra quality. And of course now people are becoming more aware of organic and the reasons behind it, which is obviously we are what we eat and we are what we drink. So having less chemicals and less pesticide residues in what we eat, that's got to be a good thing. I've certainly been involved in the industry for quite a long time. I was the Deputy Chairman of the Victorian Wine Industry Association for a number of years. These days, I think I'm more interested in leading by example in terms of what we do with MountAvoca. If we can show that you can be sustainable economically and environmentally and make amazing wine, that's probably something which is more important to me now. The things I'm proud about most with MountAvoca certainly would be the organic certification. We're certainly getting some really positive feedback on the organic side, and of course, winning awards and trophies and things is great too. And being organic and the most highly awarded winery in the region make it pretty satisfying. I love the fact that when you drive into MountAvoca, there's river red gums, there's trees here that predate white settlement. In a sense, we look after the land here. You can taste that sense of place in MountAvoca. Every time someone drinks a glass, it comes right back to us. I think that's important for me. I love coming out of Melbourne, coming up here. You open the car door and straight away you're like, oh, that air. It's how air should smell. The really exciting thing about the Pyrenees is the climate. We've got a bit of altitude, which makes it a bit cooler than the low-lying areas. We're inland, so being north of the divide, we have much lower humidity. So what's great about that is much less disease pressure. So being much drier, we don't need to spray very often, and that makes it much easier to run an organic vineyard. Some years, we don't even have to spray. It's just so dry and clean, and the cold nights and the sunny days, absolutely perfect for making really fantastic wine. We have the Ecolux, which is 3 eco lodges we built around 2010. There wasn't a lot of really high quality accommodation in the region. So it's great for the region to have those extra lodges. Plus, it was part of us saying, look, we want to show people that we are the best in the region. We've got unlimited tranquility. You can come up, you can relax, and you can do nothing. You can walk outside, you can hear the birds, you can breathe the fresh air. Like all these fun projects, they start off as a fun project on the drawing board, and then $500,000 later and a couple of years of blood, sweat and tears, we put them together. We have native timbers as the cladding. We use no concrete at all in production, and the production of cement is something like 20% of greenhouse gases around the world. So by not using any concrete products or cement, that's pretty important for us. We used to have some very large-scale fermenters. Now we do almost exclusively small batch fermentation. So we pick the grapes, and because we're at one estate, the vineyard is only a few hundred metres from the winery. We pick the grapes usually really early in the morning, so they come in cold and fresh. We can process them within 40 minutes. They're in the tank. Every batch is coming. We do it by hand. In a sense, we do as little as possible. The fruit's amazing. Fermentation's a natural thing which has been happening for thousands of years. We just kind of guide it through and try and let that natural expression come out in the finished wine. The stuff I really enjoy is the blending, being the mad professor, putting the different things together and getting the final blends really right. That's, I think, the thing that really I love best. We've had quite a lot of challenges. Weather and climate, massive factors. We've had probably 17 years of drought. We haven't had great water in the dam since really the late 1990s. Then 2011, it rained, and it didn't stop. And it rained in January and February, which usually historically they're the driest months of the year. And they pretty much just wiped out. We got almost nothing. In the early 2000s, we had a lot of oversupply internationally as well as locally. So the amount of wine in the market was too much. So grape prices were low, wine prices were low. The large companies were unable to export as much. So a lot of that wine that was previously going into the UK or the US ended up being dumped on the domestic market, which has put a lot of pressure on the small players. That went on for quite a long time. So we've probably seen that turn around in the last few years, but overall it was probably tough 10, 15 years. This year's great. We've got some really good rainfall and a great spring. Going forward, what we'd really like to see with MountAvoca is getting more Victorian wine into Melbourne. I think, Melbourne's one of the few cities in the world that doesn't support its wine industry the way, San Francisco or South Africa or Italy or France does. Export's a big thing. We're getting a lot of attention from China, which is obviously a growing market. We put a lot of passion, a lot of love in what we do. When you have fantastic wine, it's enhancing someone having a fantastic meal. You're out with your family, fantastic food, home cooked, or wherever you are, you're with friends, great conversation. And the wine, if it's fantastic, it's not a headline, it just supports everything. People feel good about it. It's kind of like sharing the joy. And the wine's just part of that little magic that really makes life worthwhile living.